Thank you everyone for having us, and hopefully it's not going to be a bearable discussion for the next 45 to 50 minutes. Before we get started, I'll just recall a couple of things which I've been seeing in the social media. The first one has been about Rishi Sunak. And it's a very interesting one, because everywhere you are seeing that, just about every Indian is taking a claim on the fact that Rishi Sunak belongs to an Indian origin. The other day, I was having a very interesting discussion with my very close family members. And I was trying to convince them, if you look at his bloodline and if you look at, where his parents and the grandparents have come from, it is anything but India. And they were trying to convince me, no, look at, you're talking about Kenya, Tanzania, but you look at, Pakistan was initially India. Then I convinced them, no, Pakistan is Pakistan now. So in the end, what they told me was, look at Akshata Murthy. She is an Indian. Ye hamara damad hai, right? So the point was, we were just staking claim on someone like Rishi Sunak, right? Because he has suddenly come into the limelight. So, that was a very interesting discussion, and I had to just give up because they were my in-laws. And my wife was standing next to me. The second incident which happened, which was yesterday, we lost the match, right? I'm sure all of us, even if we have not seen, would have for sure heard in the news. We lost the semi-final match, and today in the newspaper, I read that the BCCI has planned to kick out just about every senior member of the cricket team. Very interesting, right? Because still about a couple of days back, these were very, very, very much celebrated, sportsmen. The point here is, our people, right? If you look at Rishi Sunak's example, you look at our, the Rohit Sharma and his team. Are they really so critical, so important for anything? We don't blink an eye to embrace them, but at the same time, if the slightest of the glitch, we just discard them, right? I personally feel people are the cornerstone, but then what is it that we can do to ensure that the cornerstone remains stable? So that would be my opening thought and question to the panelist. And maybe start off with Mayank. You have built an organization, pretty much from grounds up. You've had some very interesting ups and downs. We were having some very interesting discussions on the table as well. Your experience around that would be very, very interesting for us to know.
So basically, you want me to tell my journey?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So I'll keep it short because it's a 5-year long journey, right? We were in IIT Kharagpur, and the fact about IIT Kharagpur is it's 150 kilometers away from Kolkata. So anything you want to do, you have to travel on a local train for 2-3 hours and get there. Kharagpur had no restaurants or the major places where you could relax or enjoy. And back in those days, the only online platform was Zomato, where you could find menus and what was happening. And that was a disappointing thing, that menus were most of the times not updated, events were not updated, and all of those used to happen. That's when me and Preetham got frustrated with that, and we basically decided to build a platform which would allow restaurants to put their menus, events, offers, everything in real time. Now, this hit off really well with restaurants, but we figured out that with customers it did not resonate much. Then around 2019, we started speaking to a lot of people that used to visit restaurants and all, and wanted to know that what were the pain points that they would like to have solved. And most of them used to say that we could book a cab on a phone, we could order food on my phone. Why do I have to wait for a waiter to bring me this bulky paper menu or this cardboard menu and that has stains and all of those things? And why can't I do it independently? So in 2019, we basically launched QR code ordering. That was pre-COVID. We started working with some of the microbreweries like Vaibhav, Big Brewski. A lot of these guys were there, around close to some 20-25 microbreweries and other restaurants. And it was picking up, people were in fact downloading an app. We were a B2C company. And while we were doing that, we learned that we were solving the problem completely from a wrong angle. We were thinking that it's the customer's pain. But the more we dug deep into it, we figured out that it was the inefficiencies of the restaurant's operation. That's why customers are struggling, and it's not just customers, but even the staff were struggling, right? And fortunately for us, like I don't see COVID as an unfortunate event, even though we had to shut down our first company. It was majorly bootstrapped, right? We took our learnings and we applied to YC for a third time. And we got into it. We didn't have any product, any growth, anything. We just said that this is the story, this is our learning. And if we get in, this is what we want to build, like a full stack ecosystem. And then after YC, once the lockdown opened in January, we built our MVP in 2021, January of 2021. We launched before Valentine's Day, and it picked up at 3 or 4 pubs that were our customers from eatable time. And we saw that, yeah, this is something that everybody is liking, even the staff. Even though it didn't have a lot of things, we didn't have features like inventory, we didn't have payments at all, right? But still it made sense to the customers. And what I kind of learned from this journey is it goes through, like, it's a sine curve, right? Most of the times you don't like the down curves, but it's a part of the journey. And looking at things from an optimistic view and trying to learn why things are not working instead of getting frustrated actually gets, like, it gives you a lot of mileage. And the other thing would be always like, it takes persistence. You just don't give up and things will happen.
Absolutely, and I'm pretty sure through this thick and thin of things, the first set of employees or the first set of people around you would have supported you and would have built processes around the entire ecosystem. You also kind of mentioned while we were sitting, your whole thought process, the design thinking was around empathy, right? And this was very interesting when you mentioned the empathy for the waiters, right? Something that are not being looked upon, pardon my language, but not being looked upon that well. It's a very interesting thing to think about. How did that happen?
Yeah, so when I did Eatable, right, I worked at restaurants very closely with the staff and all, just to understand everything, right? Even though I come from the restaurant industry, my family used to own a small restaurant back in the day. But why this happened was we set out with Eatable to solve for experience, right? And with Eplorex also, we are solving for experience. That x@Eplorex is explore great experiences, kind of that thing. Now, what we figured out was everybody in the industry and all of our competitors are at least 10 years old, right? And they've just built out product and just shipped it out. You can get billing done, you can get reports, and they didn't think through that how can you make people's lives easier, right? And restaurants, like working at a restaurant is a thankless job, very honestly. It's not just the waiter, it's the cashier, it's the general manager, everybody. Even if you are running a smaller cafe, then the owner himself is a manager there, right? Sometimes he serves. So when we saw the kind of struggles and the pain, like it literally felt inhuman that when you have had your lunch and you're going back home and you're chilling and maybe you're waking up in the morning and going to work, these guys have timings, right? They'll sit at 12, go till 2 a.m. at night for the night audits and everything, and then they again have to report back on time at the morning opening of the restaurant. So that is also one of the major reasons why there's a huge amount of attrition in this industry. We also provide, like we have partnered with OnSurety to provide group insurance to restaurant workers, right, health insurance and all of those things. That has also reduced attrition for them, and they started loving the platform as well. So none of these guys actually thought anything beyond just services.
Amazing, amazing. You mentioned about how COVID didn't have that great an impact on you, but I would invite Vaibhav to share and Portea has been in the forefront. We have seen largely how crippled our overall healthcare ecosystem was, especially during the COVID times. What were your experiences, pre-COVID, post-COVID? How did you deal with those? Again, where your people came in, you're again talking about, how you have used technology to actually help get people better, and the kind of partnership ecosystem that you have built around it.
So I'll probably quickly give like a thing, what all we do in that sense. So maybe people part will come out. So Portea is one of India's leading outside the hospital healthcare services company. So we look at for all the tertiary care, patients should go to the hospitals, and for rest of the care which can be provided at home or in their offices, can we do it for them? And as as Mainak was talking about people, right? So when we started building this organization 9 years back, this was not an organized segment in the country, right? So we're the first one who are looking at how do we organize this. This need has been there, and if you look at the US, UK and all, this is like a very, very established offering, and it also gets covered by insurance. So when we started building, how do you get people together is the most important thing. One is that like a physiotherapist or a nurse or a doctor or like a nursing attendant, right? How do you make sure that they see this as a career option? So nurse, rather than working in a hospital, why they should work with you, or a physiotherapist, and why should they go home? Even with doctors, why should they visit the patient's homes? They used to have family doctors forever back, right? Now we're saying, why should they go to patient homes, right? So that is something which we spend a lot of time in building right upfront, how to create this as a career option for them. And given that, as you were talking about technology, in our case, they are not coming to office all the times, right? So I have to basically, they do home care, right? So they will go from their homes to the patient homes, work with them, number of visits or staying there or whatever else, and after that go back. So how do you connect? They come to office, of course, for training and a lot of other things, but fact is they are not coming, you're not seeing them day to day. So how do you connect with them on a day-to-day basis? How do you make them feel that they are your employees, correct? What is of course, from a patient perspective, we are adding enough value because the complete range of services of a patient comes to us, from setting up ICU to providing the basic care like a lab test or something we'll do at home. But how do you make sure that the person who's sitting in patient home, and some of these people are in patient home for years together. I mean, some of the first few patients we started are still with us. So they are employees with us and patients with us who have been there for last 8-9 years. So how do you make sure that these people see Portea as the company which, other than giving their salary, does other things also for them, right? So technology becomes very important for that. And of course now, smartphones have become a lot more prevalent and you can use technology to train them and interact with them. But back then, we had a very interesting program we started, what is called 𝗕𝗲𝗄𝗃. So we used to do this IVR-based connect with people. So every training which you have to do, they have to listen to IVR-based training and then take test on IVR, right? And it became very successful, and at some stage, we kept this line open, and we used to see that not only our employees, other companies' people also used to log into that to learn that actually. So like that, we have used technology. Now, of course, app, like we have been using app for quite some time, and all the training and everything else happens using app. So I think that is something there, but it's still very, very early days. How do you engage with them on an ongoing basis? Other than doing activities like saying going to the patient home and celebrating the nurse birthday or patient's birthday, right? How do you make sure that you are also spending enough time in the field? So it's a combination of offline and of course technology. Given that we are in the care industry, right? Healthcare is all about caring, right? And empathy, as we were discussing before, and compassion. So how do you make sure that you demonstrate that in each of your actions? And given that we also scaled, we are almost in 40 cities now. So how do you make sure that across cities, across category of people, across category of patients, how do you build that? Second thing which is interesting, you're talking about partnership. I think that's something which we spent a lot of time right from the beginning. And given that we are trying to create something unique in the country, the whole idea was once we create capabilities, we said which all verticals and industries can use it. So we went to hospitals and saying if your patients are getting discharged, we could be your home care partners, right? We could be running it for you. So we work with almost top 70-80 hospitals right now as we speak, right? And then we think, who else can we take the same capability to, right? So we took it to insurance company, we took it to corporate, saying that, okay, rather than you have medical rooms in your offices, we will run the medical room for you. My capability is that a doctor can come to a remote location, right? He can go to a corporate also. Another interesting one, we start working with pharma companies, because pharma companies didn't have access to their patients by law, right? They can't have. But they want to provide them services. So if a pharma company is in oncology or rheumatoid arthritis or something like that, they want to provide a value add to the patient, saying, okay, you can do physiotherapy, or nurse can come home and do a treatment for you or infusion for you. All those services we can offer. So then we looked at capabilities and how capabilities fit into the system. I think that's something which has worked very well. And that's a formula which we cracked in the first couple of years. And I've taken it every year, everywhere, saying, okay, this is a capability created, who all can use it in the ecosystem. And that's something which has continuously grown and has got a life of its own. And the third question which you asked about COVID, I think for us, COVID is like the demonetization moment, like for healthcare for sure. So home care, of course, was a nice to have thing before COVID. Insurance was not covering it, but I think during COVID, government IRDA mandated that home isolation got covered under insurance, and that of course made it a lot more legitimate in that sense. It's no more a nice to have service, it also became like a must have service for a lot of companies, and now a lot of insurance companies are actively discussing, saying how they can use home care as part of their overall offering. But COVID, two things which happened to us very, very differently. In wave one, of course, a lot of lockdowns happened, so it was a very different scenario. A lot of discretionary home care got stopped, people, physiotherapists and things like that. That time we were so scared. We didn't know what COVID was, right? So and now I saw somebody's written a book also on how they handled COVID, right? So now it looks like it was a long time back. But COVID wave one, when it started, the isolation at home was 17 days. The first guideline from government which came was for 17 days. And we did the first home isolation program along with Delhi government. It's the first time a program like that got launched, and we managed almost 4 lakh patients under home isolation with different various state governments. So that was wave one. A lot of innovation happened during that time, and of course we also had enough existential crisis, right? You don't know whether you'll survive or not, right, after that, because the offices are closed, and we were very used to feel very nice that we could get that pass saying that, oh, you're healthcare and you can go around in a car, right? It was like, I kept that pass. I said my son can use it later and show people, see my father had a pass during COVID time, right? Second wave two was very, very lethal in that sense, because oxygen was like a big requirement. And I think that's where we could also impact society in a significant manner. We became, I think, we had almost 10,000 oxygen concentrators out on rent at that time, working with different patients in their homes. And we used to get hundreds and thousands of calls, people saying, can you set up ICU at home for us? Which was basically saying, can you set up ICU because, can you set up oxygen because they're not getting hospital beds. Of course, luckily it lasted only 45 days from crisis perspective, but that also gave us a peek into how to run large scale operations with people. I mean, not only our own employees, but also how do you deal with patients who are really struggling, right? And COVID wave 2 was quite severe in that sense. So that has been a big learning in wave 2. Of course, the whole market changed. We got a lot more legitimized in that sense from a service perspective. And of course, after wave 3, now we know that there's no COVID. All of us are sitting here without mask and believe that, okay, COVID is behind us, and hopefully so it is behind us. So now, of course, healthcare is going back to its pre-COVID form. And so other thing which happened in our case, and I think many of you might have seen in your ventures also, is that it's a building, rebuilding actually. So in our sense, like a version 4 has happened in last 4 years actually. And that's what you are figuring out. So what we did 4 years back, you have to go back to that saying, okay, now it's pre-COVID time. Teleconsultation is a good example. Teleconsultation became such a big thing in COVID time, right? It's almost back to pre-COVID times now. So because companies got created, funding happened because of teleconsult and digital health and things like that. And teleconsultation in India is almost back to pre-COVID levels actually. So as if COVID came, everything you did during that time and it went away actually. So how do you continuously change companies' structure and companies' contours basis how the market is changing? Last 3 years have taught us a lot about that. So that has been a big learning. How do you treat your people? How do you treat your patients? How do you work with the ecosystem? Becomes very, very important in that sense. So how do you keep the patience, and how do you continuously think on your feet? I think is something which we have learned in the last 3-4 years.
That's very amazing, because and we have seen during COVID days, COVID times, especially the healthcare workers, right? I think the things that motivated them was more intrinsic, as opposed to, we keep talking about employee engagement, we keep talking about all of these. But I think if we can, based on your story, if we can give purpose to the individuals, right? You don't necessarily really have to work on the employee engagement. It is the purpose. It is they believing that you're investing in them, how you are upskilling them, how you are not, it's not about a technology versus people, but how about, in your case, technology has enabled people to get upskilled and to get cross-skilled. I think those all things that you put in place has really helped. Yes. Not just now, but even during COVID days.
Totally agree, yes.
Great. Talking about partners, and again, very interesting the way you folks work with the partner ecosystem. So we were talking about you during lunch. You again have very, very unique, I would say, idea that you are working on or kind of have worked upon and still going. You were part of the company right from day one, pretty much. Right? So not just the idea per se, but the people and the processes that you built about right from day one. how much of that has stayed as it is? How much did you have to change? And how did you kind of come across, what should I change? Should I change process because my people need to be changed, or should I change people or upskill or downscale? How did you go about doing that? Because you have seen the company right from pretty much day one.
So, Mayank, since the beginning, people have been the crux of our business, right? With scale, we had to always, go back and reevaluate what we are doing, if the tech stack is right, if the scale of people, are we at the right scale of people? Do we need to, bring in more people, or what do we do with the existing people if we need to upskill, right? We have not been able to, find the right answer in the first go. We've always had to, do a few trial and, go by trial and error basis. We come from a heavy partner ecosystem, right? And to build that heavy partner ecosystem, we need to have the right people within the team itself. And for this, since our very beginning, right, where we started, when we started here in India, we were just a 3-member team, and today we are about 80+ member team in a span of 4 years. We have tried everything possible in terms of bringing in the people with the right skills, or bringing in the people with the ones with the right attitude whom we can upskill as well. And we have gone on with the flow. We've just gone with the flow to build the right tech stack and as well as the right processes. And whilst building those processes, there was a constant need for checking for redundancies as well. You cannot just keep building on the same process whilst you're scaling, because you might have created redundancies. And we need to check back at that, and then go forward with a better way of optimizing the existing processes and build upon that further. So we could never get it right in the very first go, but we have always found the best way as and when we have trialed and tested various different approaches in these last couple of years. So far we have been able to hit the right mark eventually. So we know that the same approach would help us go further.
Amazing. And the way your whole ecosystem works is you have actually partnered with a lot of I would say local laundromats, right? How do you pick and choose? Is it like onboarding just about anyone as a partner, or is it like which ones do you pick and choose? Do you have some sort of a mechanism? And at what point of time, who should we reach out to? Who should we approach to make us the right partner of our choice?
That's a very good question there, Mayank. So basically, we look at every market in a different angle, right? We are currently serving in about 10 countries across the globe. We have London, which is our home turf, which is our biggest market, and then we also have Chicago and Boston, which is 2 of our markets in US. The scale in London is not the same as what it is in Chicago and what it is in Boston. So when we are entering any of these markets, we need to also simultaneously pick partners, because without partners, we cannot run our business. And whilst we are picking these partners, we have certain metrics that need to be met from the partners' end. Whilst the metrics are met, we are also looking at the scale. Where can we be with these partners within a year's time, within 2 years' time, and within 3 years' time? And in each of these markets, again, the scale is different. So we are looking at partners of various sizes dependent on the market and its demand itself, right? So there are quite a few checkboxes that we need to tick before we go in with any of the partners. So interestingly, we have a few partners who came on board with us during the inception of our company, who are still with us after these many years, right? They're still serving with us, and they're pretty much exclusively working with Laundry Heap right now. So that's been the kind of scale that we have been able to provide for them as well, and which has helped them grow as a business.
Wow. Anish, we were again having a very interesting conversation, and we were just thinking, as part of this panel discussion, what should we talk about in terms of technology, right? Because often for someone like me, who comes from largely from a product and an IT kind of a background, I can get very much biased about, when we talk about technology, it is largely, software and hardware kind of stuff. But I think Anish brought in a very, very valid point, which was technology is not that only, technology is beyond that. Technology can exist in just about anything that we are using, which is helping us to make our lives and make our tasks much more easier, right? Do you want to share your experiences, Anish, around how you have built Tagz, right? Tagz Food. What kind of challenges you have faced around, in the people part of it, in the technology part of it, in the process part of it? How did you overcome those challenges? Something that I think all of us would want to hear from you.
Sure. So Mayank, one of the most frequent accusations which is possibly leveled on me is that, how in the world are you always smiling? Nothing seems to upset you or, get you anxious. And my response to that normally is that as a second-time entrepreneur now, been an entrepreneur almost 10 years. Obviously, and Vaibhav sir will agree here, you see so much that normally things don't affect you as much. But I think far more important is the fact that, today I am possibly surrounded by people and partners who have my back, regardless of what the circumstances are. And I think that speaks volumes about the importance of people and partners while building a business in India, right? So the way I look at it, I owe a peaceful night's sleep to possibly, people, my team, and potentially all the partners, who have our back. But actually, if you look at the topic that we're kind of discussing here, it's very, very interesting. And I will possibly like to bring out a few nuances, not just in context of Tagz, but businesses in India versus businesses outside of India. And that will possibly help clarify on some of the challenges that we faced and we've coped with. Now, we are talking about people, process, technology, and partners, right? I think outside of software talent, on the people front, I believe India even today is a very, very low-cost labor market, right? As a result of which, in most businesses, I think a lot of us have been guilty of, at some point in time or the other, of throwing people at the problem, right? Without necessarily solving for the right process, deploying the right technology. But just because labor is relatively cheaper, in India, unlike markets outside of India, there is a very, very common disposition towards throwing people at the problem, right? Sometimes that leads to all the layoffs that we are also seeing to an extent. On the partners front, I think India, again, culturally is a very low trust society. As a result of which, you really don't see partnerships at the core of the GTM model of most Indian companies. Also because, the regulatory framework and legal recourses are kind of very, very difficult, right? So a low trust society with a legal framework which doesn't support, I think building partnerships in India is very, very difficult. Most Indian businesses, even today, and I'm talking in context of SMBs, possibly not just the technology companies, I think most Indian businesses even today end up being relatively low gross margin businesses and low scale businesses, and hence can't afford to use internal technology to strengthen process. And these are companies which are possibly much more obsessed on scale, and hence there is very limited deployment of technology, and hence process never kicks off. So with this context, around people, process, technology, and partners that I've laid out, I think we went through each of these dilemmas while building Tagz as well, right? And how we kind of solved for it is as follows. I think number one, the maximum amount of impetus that we gave on was building the right core team, right? And the core team, in my view, is not just the co-founders. Trust me, the co-founders are, within a 3-year span, right, possibly contributing to only 10% of the value creation in the company, right? The moment you are even a 30% company, with maybe 2 or 3 co-founders, 90% of the value is actually getting created by the 27 people who are technically not co-founders. So I think putting in place the right cultural framework is exceedingly important. For the first 30, 100, whatever that number of people be? And I think that's something that we focused on a lot. As a result of which, even today we get asked about it. In the last 18 months, we've possibly grown our top line 8 times, but our team size has possibly gone up only by 10 or 15%, because the same team which is delivering that much more. One of the things, like most other Indian companies, we've possibly been guilty of is that we've never used a lot of internal technology, to be very honest, because top line growth assumed a lot more importance than efficiency, right? So how we solved for process, again, is by using people as a surrogate for making sure that processes are adhered to. And whether it comes to people or whether it comes to partners, I think one very simple rule that we operate with is not how much the people or the partners grow with us, but how long they stand with us, right? So we take pride in the fact that our oldest distributors still today work with us, or our oldest manufacturing partners even today work with us. And it's not a rosy ride at all. So I think a very, very relevant topic that we kind of discussing today, and makes all the sense for us to discuss this in context of small businesses which often don't really have the time, energy, effort, wherewithal to think about these 4 elements. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, those are some of the things that at least at Tagz we've deployed, alongside, of course, keeping in mind that consumer love is paramount. So
very, very interesting one, Anish, because can't agree. There is a culture aspect, and often we talk about the cultures in the organization and how these cultures, they flow top down. In a small organization, it's much more easier to convey. In a bigger organization, at times we see that getting lost, right? And that's where I think, to your point, the kind of kitchen cabinet that you have built, the kind of people that you have surrounded yourself, who you can trust or have trust in, they play a very, very significant role, so that kind of a culture is being cascaded down. And not only internally within the people, but also the same thing should be felt by the partners, right? Because I agree with you again, in the SMB case, it is largely the relationships with the partners that work. With the relationships, you can, we often are told just make the relationships work, and just by relationships we can get things done. Otherwise, that probably wouldn't happen, right? So that.
In that context, I'd like to point out that again, as compared to US, we are very, very different people, right? And very, very different businesses. Yeah, in the US, when Netflix or HubSpot writes a fantastic culture deck, right? It goes viral. People start following it to the T, and I think great cultures get built that way, right? Just because there's a fantastic culture deck which has been created, right? But in my view, in India, culture decks don't work. India is a country where आप दीवार पे लिख दोगे यहाँ थूकना मना है, आदमी वहीं जाके थूकेगा. Right? So, it's not the written culture document which in my view makes any impact at all. And Vaibhav sir has built a very large company. I'm sure he will agree with me on this. It is all about action coming from the top every single day in every single conversation, which ends up laying down the right cultural precincts, and continuously you have to keep reinforcing it.
I totally agree. One of the other attributes which is being often talked about nowadays is empathy. And we kind of briefly mentioned the start of the conversation. I mean, as co-founders, right? And as one of the paramount person in your organizations, with how you folks have kind of gone about, or is it kind of overrated, underrated? How have you ensured that there's a fine balance there? Empathy at times can be probably looked upon as someone is chilled out or calm, or wouldn't really matter even if the work is not getting done, or is it more like having a very different mindset in the organization?
I was just talking to our CEO and CEO the other day, and this was a question that I asked them, the point of inception, right? You need to think of quite a few things. You're scaling and you're going to be building a business for quite a few years. People, culture, and the aspect of empathy. Like, are you going to have a written law about, like, empathy? How are you going to, like, deal with people in terms of what is acceptable, what is not? And for example, if I were to, I like to be treated in a particular way. Just because I like to be treated in a particular way doesn't mean that I can go and treat another person in the same way. Probably for that person, it's not acceptable, right? That person needs to be treated in a particular way. We again have a very diverse team spread across about 4 different countries, where we have managers sitting in one country who's of a very different culture, and the team members sitting in another country, right? Like, and the factor of empathy again is it varies across, like, regions. A situation which is to be considered something where it needs a lot of empathy in probably Singapore, it's not the same in the Middle East. And something in the US is not the same in the UK, right? So from the top down, like, our the senior management, the senior leaders, like, they've always been very conscious in, like, trying to keep a bit of a generic approach where everyone within the company understand the nuances between each of these different regions and each of these different cultures, to be able to, like, easily adapt into those teams and, like, work well despite of working within a team, but from different countries, right? Something over here, for example, pre and post pandemic, a culture and just a, like, the working culture that was accepted pre a pandemic, which was actually even cherished, post pandemic is not. Post pandemic, like, the culture is completely different. That is because of, like, certain experiences that people have gone through. So we need to really, like, look at the factor of empathy from the individual's perspective itself, whilst we are, like, building an organization of this sort and this magnitude.
So I'll add to that. I think from our perspective, empathy is an important thing, because we are also in the business of providing care to the patients. So if you are not empathic towards patients, you cannot run this. Compassion and empathy is very critical to run healthcare, right? And if you want to make sure that your employees treat patients that way, you have to treat your employees the same way, right? But I think empathy, as he was rightly saying, I think it's different thing to different people. But I think 2 things which are very universal in that sense, right? That when you're dealing with people, do you keep their dignity? And when you're dealing with people, are you fair actually? So if you decide this is my company policy, this is how I operate, and I think we also touched briefly upon the whole layoff thing and all which is going on. As a business, it could be in any situation. You could be in high growth situation, you could be in consolidation, you could be downsizing, you could be anything, right? These are all market dynamics driven things. How do you make sure that you keep people's dignity and you are fair to people actually? I think to my mind, those are 2 values which help you to build an organization and keep it at that level always. So even if you're letting somebody go, you should go with dignity, and he should know that it's fair to him actually. It's not like this is the best you could do. End of the day, I mean, and we hear, I'll probably touch upon that a little bit, saying that so many layoffs are happening and people, startups are like cricket team, right? Like what you were saying about India losing to England yesterday, right? So when everything is going great, they are everything, right? Whether they are in a stock market or elsewhere. And when things are going bad, so that guy is laying off 1,000 and that's laying off 10,000, then becomes a number, right? We get this pleasure out of saying, 10,000 people they laid off, or 5,000. The fact is a fight on lives, right? But how do you deal with it? This is like also, and I always compare it saying when GE was getting built, say 100 years, 200 years back, right? Industrial revolution was happening. Even then this must be happening. People were setting up things, people were letting people go because something didn't work. Today, because it's tech driven, it's so much more out there in news, it just gets discussed way too much beyond what is required. But during all those times also, when you are hiring people, you will hire people by lakhs and lakhs of people. When you let go people also, you'll probably let go people in large numbers, because that's what market decides. We forget that we as consumer are not buying stuff. That's why this company is not getting business. That's why people is getting laid off. So I've been saying, okay, when you are having fun, that's saying, okay, or having discussions that the company is laying off people, you should also know that you as a consumer are not spending any more. If you spend more, that guy will not lose his job. So in one way, you are responsible for that guy losing his job actually, right? You take a step back and think. You go and buy more TVs, right? Go and buy more phones, and people will not lose their jobs, right? So, but when each of these things you do, whether in good times, bad times, not so good times, you have to make sure that you're keeping people's dignity and you're fair to them. Actually, to my mind, those are two big principles. And that will show up in empathy, compassion, whatever else, because that is different for different people, different cultures, very rightly he said actually. So I think that's how we should look at it.
Brilliant. Mainak, I couldn't help notice that you had a wry smile when Vaibhav was talking about empathy. Any interesting incident, anecdote that you have?
No, I just, I agree with both of them, right? The other thing that I'd add is, as your company grows, you need to maintain the level of transparency, which is something you should have from day one. You need to make sure that transparency is there across all levels, right? Like maybe a company starts with 2 people and then you add the first 10 people and you're interacting on a daily basis with those 10 people, right? So they know what's happening. But as you keep growing, there will be managers who will be interacting with the next set of people, right? And I think empathy is a part of the culture of your company. And then again, it differs from company to company as well. I would add that for us, we kind of have a human first approach wherein even though you have all of those company policies that you can take these many leaves or these many work from homes and otherwise there will be LOPs and all, but situation to situation, like somebody is looking to upskill themselves or they're taking a college course and all for which they will not be able to follow the timelines. You need to make exceptions, and it should not feel to other people that you're doing some special, you're giving some special treatment to someone, right? They need to be able to understand, and that only happens through transparency, which is according to me a very, very important part that should be there in your culture.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anish, you also, and Vaibhav, you also alluded towards the very interesting discussion on the layoffs, right? And you know, these things do happen, right? But in your head, how do you think an organization can, so you brought in an aspect of dignity and, you know, with dignity let people go off. But usually, you know, how can an organization kind of build itself and create kind of an ecosystem wherein the layoffs are, if at all, very minimal? How do you do that? Is it really possible? Because when one way we are saying people are the cornerstone, most important, and the other way is, you know, we have to at times just let go of them. What does it do to our processes? What does it do to our partners? You know, do we also let go of the partners in that case? I have seen in most of the cases, partners are the first one to let go of, right? Especially when we are outsourcing some of the work, and then we keep or retain our people because there is an inherent belief that, you know, these are our people. So why partners are getting as kind of a second fiddle treatment? Any thoughts around that? And what an organization or a company can kind of do to overcome that?
So Mayank, I think you made a very interesting segue from the previous conversation that we were just having about empathy to this one. And I think, you know, it's strongly correlated. My quick take on the empathy piece is, in India, empathy is an unaffordable luxury that Indian companies cannot afford. Let me be very blunt about it. Okay, I think in India, companies can afford to be fair, and that is, as he rightly said, is the minimum expectation, and that is something which should be honored. Why is empathy the unaffordable luxury? Simply because the way business models are built in India, the way companies are capitalized in India, right? Again, maybe mindset issues, maybe cultural issues, right? Every single time, whether it's an institutional investor, whether it's a public market shareholder, everybody in India is constantly questioning, you know, why is that guy in the company being paid so much, right? Or why should he or she be compensated as much? इतने पैसे में तो मुझे 5 लोग और मिल जाएंगे, right? That is the kind of country and you know, people we are. So in a situation like that, whereas in the US, the reason organizations can afford to be a lot more empathetic in a situation like a layoff is because they are all factored in these things in the business model, that if I need to let go of a person, I need to honor him with at least a 6 months kind of a severance pay, whereas that has not been factored in the business model of an Indian company, right? So hence I feel that empathy is that unaffordable luxury, right? Can layoffs be avoided? Yes, of course. But then it depends what are your growth ambitions, right? So for example, at Tagz, we are very, very clear that while we are building the company, at no point in time will we allow, you know, our wage bill to exceed 15% of our net sales, right? Because as a company, we don't necessarily obsess about hyper growth. We are not obsessed with an outcome of becoming a unicorn overnight, right? Because we are not chasing that kind of a rapid scale up. Let's be very honest about it. So we're very clear that we don't exceed 15% of our net sales. Even if you end up raising external capital, we don't flout that rule. And the logic behind that is that I know for a fact that 15% spends on my wage bill is something that I can sustain whether the business is going up or down, right? Plus minus 5% here and there. But not all businesses can afford to operate with a rule like this, right? There are businesses which are going ahead and raising millions of dollars and are possibly chasing lofty dreams, right, in terms of growth. Now, there are people who are choosing to come and join such companies out of their own volition or because of the compensation that is being given to them. But I'm sure people should understand the risks involved as well. So there will continue to be certain kinds of businesses which will see these massive spikes in hiring and possibly an equal amount of layoffs as well. Whereas certain businesses, certain companies will continue to have a more predictable trajectory in terms of growth, right? So as a company, we possibly think twice before creating a new position. Do we really need this, right? Is this a long-term position? Or is this a position that I'm creating only to meet my next 3 months or 6 months goal, right? But different companies operate with a different rubric.
I think one thing is very clear. No founder or company CEO or anybody comes to office thinking, okay, let me let people go and I'll feel good about it, right? I mean, it's a very difficult thing to do actually. And all of us, now forget about layoffs or otherwise. I mean, anybody who's worked for some time in life would have let people go for performance, for anything, right? I mean, you let anybody go, and that's never an easy thing to do. So who wants to do that? Nobody wants to do that. I mean, we also have this karma thing in India, right? So in our thing saying, if I let somebody go, the bad karma will touch me, right? So people always have all kind of issues around that. But I think this is one thing which we forget when we talk of layoffs and everything else, that corporate also, the company also is a living entity. It's called a going entity for a reason, right? And when you start working for a company, it's no different than, I mean, at one level, it's no different than you, like, army fighting a battle for the country, right? The country is bigger than you, correct? As I say, nobody's bigger than cricket, right? So Rohit Sharma has to go tomorrow, he has to go tomorrow, right? It's like, it would be a big brand, but he's not bigger than cricket. So in the same way, your employee is not bigger than the company. Company has to live, right? Because it creates it fulfills a need for the society in some way or other. And of course, it provides employment to so many other people. And layoffs are cyclical actually. I mean, as all industries go through cycles, seasons happen, everything happens, it will happen in business also. And as you celebrate so many people getting jobs, I mean, we should always look at it in the context. If you look at all the startups put together, how many jobs they created in the last 10 years? With layoffs, without layoffs, over a period of time, how many jobs they created? And if that is net positive, which it is in a big number, then we should all be always very excited about that. Of course, layoffs will happen. It's not a great situation. Somebody loses their job. But as a country or as an ecosystem, we're also continuously creating more jobs. So it's not that people have more opportunities today, right? So that's the context we should take it in. But companies' health is more important than individual goals, and that's how we should look at it, at least as somebody who's working in the organization or building a company. That's my take on it. So.
Brilliant. And when it comes to partners, have you seen anything which can be done with the partners? So because we also alluded to discussion wherein the trust with the partners might not be very easy to build. So anything that can be done with the partners wherein it can create a good trust and a good bond between you and the partners.
One simple thing is, unke paise time pe de do. That's the least. I think again it boils down to fairness, right? That if there's a commercial contract, it needs to be honored. And even if business is possibly looking down and there is a decision that needs to be made to cut certain parts of business, I think it should be done well in time, making sure that whatever the commercial agreements are, they are honored. And again, it boils down to fairness. In my view, just honoring whatever has been committed, I think should be fine.
Wonderful. So I think we kind of covered the entire spectrum, and if I were to summarize, it was, of course, the the culture, but it's not just about talk the culture, but you got to figure out how you walk the culture. It is about the empathy part of it. It is about being much more transparent, right? It is being honest. In case of partners, yes, if you adhere to your commitments, if you are able to actually meet your commitments, that trust kind of builds automatically over a period of time. And maybe even in trying times, they can help you out because they know, this is probably just a stopgap arrangement. So they kind of try to help you. And most importantly, if you have a very strong team around yourself, if they are motivational enough, intrinsic motivation enough, driving, they've got a sense of purpose, I think they are going to see your back even if, we are doing this presentation over here at this time. Anything else, any other parting statements that, I'm not sure how we are doing on time. Okay. Any other parting, thoughts or statements that you have that our, team or audience over here can take away with them?
From my perspective, I think we should we should really go all out. I think India is this is, as everybody is saying, it is correct also, this is our century. We should be fearless. We should really build what we want to build because as they say, Zindagi na milegi dobara, so aapka whatever you want to do it now actually and enjoy it actually. The most important thing, whatever you are doing, build it and enjoy it actually. That's the most important thing. We always forget saying that, okay, we always look back at so many things. I think we should be fearless and move forward actually and build it. This is your century, this is our century and we should build it. That's the way I look at it.
And I'd just like to add that irrespective of how times are, like right now it's not a good time with layoffs and markets going down and all, but what I'd say is be persistent, stay patient, and you'll just ride the wave out, right? So most people just give up within that time and they never make it out, right? So that's something. And yeah, definitely treat your people well. That's just.
Brilliant. Anything, Anish, from you or Sud? Last thoughts?
So our Prime Minister just a few days ago articulated a very interesting goal for us as a country. And he said that over the next 25 years, we should look at becoming a developed nation. That actually made me think very, very deeply. Like, should it take us 25 years to become a developed country? Because that seems like a lifetime in context of a lot of people here sitting in the room. Honestly, the optimistic entrepreneur in me believes that we can possibly do it a lot sooner, right? And especially if we have this spirit of doing it now, for sure. But I think whether we achieve it in 25 years or whether we achieve it sooner than that, what is important is, and I'm going back to the pertinence of the topic that we were possibly discussing today, is doing it right and building the foundations correctly is something which is going to be exceedingly important. And hence being prudent while making any such decisions is of paramount importance. We live in a fantastic city, Bangalore, right? Great weather and great weather and great weather. But I think we've built a great city and we all try and do our best towards it, but at the end of the day, we all recognize and understand that our infrastructure sucks. Let's make sure that, while we're on this journey of growth, we make the right decisions, we build it the right way so that we have a lot more stuff beyond just great weather as well.
My last 2 cents for anyone building a team, an organization, through the journey of building, being resilient and grounded, especially through your thick and thin, that is what's going to get you eventually to your destination. So just keep going.
Great, great. I think our Honorable Prime Minister Ji would have said 25 years, probably looking at Bangalore. It'll take that much time for the metro to come up, for the infrastructure to probably get all up and running. But yes, absolutely.
But I hope my grandkids can enjoy the metro that time. Yeah.
Great, great. Brilliant. So you heard it from the experts. Thank you so much, all of you folks, for coming here. And thank you all of you for having us here.
Any questions? I can pass down the mic.
So, do you want to give any message to a growing startup?
I think that was covered, right? Like, be transparent, treat your people well, and a growing startup, like, have patience, like, don't give up. That's where 90% or even 99% people fail.
And I think one of the points that Anish mentioned was probably don't look for hyper growth, right? Know what is the optimal growth for you is in a startup. You will find startups around you talking about growth and raising this kind of a money and that kind of a money, and then you also hear news about laying offs, right? So if you know what could be the optimal growth for you, even if it takes time, because building a startup takes time.
Any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you.